three things I think make our conversation tonight valuable, worthy, and incredibly significant. The first one is a virus. The second one is a knee on someone's windpipe. And the third one is a Bible held up in front of a church. My thoughts and feelings about all of this are deep and full, and I know that I am not the only one. So I think having a community conversation tonight is critically important, and I think that it is something that we rise to do as a faith community. And so I welcome all of you tonight, those who are part of our community and those who join us who are not, that we can gather together as the body of God's faithful and have a community conversation about a really significant topic in our world right now. We hope that our community conversations are honest, thoughtful, and respectful. Are we always superior at it? No, we're not. Sometimes we do better than other times, but we keep trying. And that's what we're doing tonight, trying to have a significant conversation about a critical set of topics as a community of faith who cares deeply about our world, about ourselves, and about who we are as God's holy people seeking the kingdom of God. And so tonight we will have a community conversation. So let's talk just a little bit about how we're going to do that. The first thing that we will do is we'll share a bit about norms, right? Norms are the way in which we describe for one another the behaviors that we expect of one another so that we can, in fact, have a conversation that is thoughtful and honest and appropriate. And then I have invited 5 souls to speak tonight, to start us off tonight by sharing their thoughts and feelings about what's going on in the world right now. And then we will open it up for anybody who wishes to share. In order for that to happen, what I want to suggest to you all is that if you would like to share your own thoughts and feelings, if you would like to ask a question, that you so indicate by either going to the chat room and saying you want to share, or by raising your hand. And delightfully, Patrick and Mellon and Deirdre McElroy are our monitors of our process tonight. They're watching over this, and they will start to create a list. And we will go through that list sequentially to the best of our ability to make sure that we get to everybody who wishes to have a chance to share and to speak tonight and to share what's coming out of your own heart and your own head and your own spirit. And then at the end, I hope we'll have a bit of a chance to sort of think through perhaps how we might respond to our conversation tonight. What are some of the things that we hope that God might be directing us to do as God's holy people? So a community conversation about an incredibly important and significant topic, an opportunity for us to have what I hope will be safe, honest as much as we can be, certainly thoughtful and respectful conversation about how we are feeling and what we're thinking, and then in the process also to be discerning about how God might be calling us forward as God's holy people seeking the kingdom of God. So that is why you are all muted at the moment, because part of that is our hope that that will allow you to listen more carefully, to listen more attentively to whoever is speaking, and not be caught off guard by background noise. So that's the purpose of the mute. It's not to mute you, it is to allow us to listen carefully to those who will be speaking And then you will have your chance, I promise, if you wish to share something, if you have a question to ask, because we need to listen carefully to each other. We need to listen carefully as the body of Christ, and we need to listen carefully how God is calling us forward to be responsive to this time in the history of our church, but also in the history of our country. And so that's sort of how the night's going to go. Is it all right? Everybody got that? Some shaking of some heads that you heard me? Thumbs up? Okay, cool. All right, so as we begin, I do want to talk about our expectations about our behavior with each other while we're listening, and also perhaps while we're speaking. And so in order to do that, we are going to use the norms that we use for our vestry meetings, for our governing board meetings. We're going to use the norms that we generally use when we get together. So I'm just going to read them to you, and then there are a couple that I'm going to add just from our Zoom norms. But I'm hopeful as I read these and share these with you that they will be part of your spirit tonight and part of the way that you are attentive to one another and to yourself and to our conversation tonight. So if and when you do speak, we normally ask ourselves to use I statements, to speak for ourselves. Each of you is a valuable child of God, and what you have to say is important. So I want to encourage you to speak for yourself tonight. I also hope that we will respect others' opinions. This is not about reaching consensus. This is about listening to one another, hearing one another, and learning from one another. So I hope and trust that tonight in your spirit, you will truly respect others' opinions, whether you agree with them or not, and find in that opinion a way to learn and to grow and to deepen in your spiritual life. I hope also that we will assume good intentions. We are a congregation that rises to our best selves over and over and over again. And so I hope that that's what we will do tonight, that we are going to assume good intentions from each other as we share whatever it is that's important. I hope we'll remember that we are a team with God's purpose, that we are gathered together as the body of Christ in order to be God's children in the world and to seek out the kingdom of God. So I hope that we recognize that that's what it means to be the body of Christ, that we are in this together and that we are God's team. I hope also that there won't be a lot of sidebar conversations. Now, what I mean by that is using the chat mode to have a lot of sidebar conversations. That's like having side conversations, and that's something that we do our best not to do because we want to be fully attentive to whoever is speaking. I also want to encourage us to not have a lot of parking lot conversations. You might say that's really easy, Flo, because we're not at church on the parking lot. But let me reiterate that a parking lot conversation is when we finish this and you get on your text, your phone, or your computer, and you start having a lot of conversations after this that never come back to us as a group. And so it's not that you're not going to have conversations about this when we're finished, but parking lot conversations tend to be unhelpful. And what I hope will happen is that as this conversation begins tonight, and we might have others as well, that we are invested in sharing our thoughts and our reactions with each other. I also hope that if you have any discomfort, that you will share that you will let us know. That discomfort is often the work of the Holy Spirit in our lives, and it also helps us do this kind of conversation better, and particularly as we continue to move forward and have more conversations about that. I think that's about it. Our last norm, of course, generally speaking, is to have some fun. I hope that at some level, while this is going to be pretty serious and a complicated conversation at some level, I hope that it also will bring some lightness ultimately to your heart and to your spirit to know that you are not, that we're not alone, that we are a community of faith, that we are a community of people who care, and we're a community that we care about each other, and we care about what it means to be God's people in this world. So I hope that also brings some energy to you and some hope. So we're going to start with a prayer. And then, as I said, I've invited 5 people to speak with us tonight. I've asked Senator Shirley Nathan Pulliam, to speak with us tonight from her own distinctive perspective, certainly as a member of longstanding at St. Bartholomew's, but also the world in which she is inhabited. I've asked Patricia Smith to speak with us tonight as a former policewoman and somebody who has her own distinct sense of things. I've asked Michael Sarbanes to share with us tonight as a man of European descent, raising children of African descent, and as a teacher. I've asked Steve Dethridge and possibly Connie to speak. They are raising 2 extraordinary young men, and so they will have their own perspective. And then finally, I've asked Justin Rose, who just turned 22. Congratulations, Justin. And Justin is an alum of one of our pilgrimages as we followed the Underground Railroad route from New Orleans to Detroit. And he has his own wonderful, strong, and powerful witness as well. When each of them is finished, then we will turn to listening to all of us who want to share our thoughts, our feelings, and any questions that we have. And then we will have a chance to wrap up, I hope, and then end with a prayer as well. So, are you ready? Ready for an opening prayer? Oh God, who created all peoples in your image, we thank you for the wonderful diversity of races and cultures in this world. Enrich our lives by ever widening circles of fellowship, and show us your presence in those who differ most from us, until our knowledge of your love is made perfect in our love for all your children, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Okay, are we ready? Okay, Shirley, you are on.
Okay. Well, I don't know what's happening here. All of a sudden, I lost all of you.
That's all right, because you're on speaker view.
Because I'm speaking.
You're speaking.
Oh, well, I'm happy to be here for us to share our thoughts. These last couple of days, I should say 6 nights and 7 days, have been fearful. It's been, I can't find words to describe the anxiety, the anger, and feeling a sense of helplessness. And I don't like to feel helpless. But as a mother of 2 sons, a grandmother of 1, the sister-in-law of 2, all of these are Black males I'm calling about. My 6 nephews, all of them live right here in the United States. Some in Maryland and some in different parts. But I find myself, even yesterday, as I went to the hospital to be seen for my eyes, as I stepped out, I found I'm stopping strangers, young Black men helping me off the sidewalk. I'm stopping them and telling them to please be careful, take care of yourself. Don't do this, don't do that. I'm out there lecturing. And then I realized that I need to stop it. But in a way, my heart still aches because this is a frightening time for us in this country. This is America, the land of opportunity, the country that I came to because I was told it was not only one of the wealthiest, but one of the land of opportunity for all people. And I discovered when I got here in the 1960s, that if the color of your skin was Black, the opportunity was not for all. And there was so much that we have accomplished since 1960 to now. However, we have not gotten that far. When I asked my son, Wayne, And I asked one of my colleagues, how did it feel about it? I've cut my phone off. Sharon, I can't talk to you. Okay.
This is vintage Shirley, by the way.
I guess we have to remember to cut all our phones off. Okay. And when I spoke to my colleague, he said he could not believe that anybody could be so inhuman to kneel on someone's neck all that length of time while they're pleading and begging that they can't breathe. And what kind of country have we come to? How we have come to be this low. And then as I talked to my son, he talked about lack of leadership. He talked about that whether we agree or not, that we have a president that is not a leader, doesn't know anything about the word. And he was very upset that yesterday he should take the Bible and go before St. John's Church and held it up for a photo shoot, a political photo shoot, not because he was concerned about the death of George Floyd. And so I listened to all the different complaints and people calling me on this topic. They've sent me all kinds of, one I got today, show me 6 different groups of people putting their knee in a mock demonstration on someone's neck, all Caucasian males. And that bothered me because young children may see that and think that's something they can do. We have a lot of work to do, tremendous amount of work to do. And as my son said, he doesn't think that he will live to see this country free of racism. However, he had hope yesterday when he heard Governor of Illinois spoke about, gave him some hope, and that he realized that and he knows that all white people aren't bad and aren't people who are racist. And that gave him some hope and some good feeling. And I was happy to hear him say that. So I don't know, I don't want to babble on, but I know that some of the things have been going through my mind in terms of what we need to do from a policy standpoint. We have to come up with strategy. George Floyd is already gone, but we have to come up with policies and that become laws that to prevent this kind of things from happening again. The police brutality have to be addressed. The crimes, the injustices, and how we reform this country. I have a whole list of them, but it would take up too much time to tell you. But I would love to see when we draft these legislation and get them together, that we have people coming to Annapolis, black and white, and although I'm not there, I will find the right sponsor and I'll be there testifying as long as I can walk, and hope that all of you will be there, sitting in those pews, standing up in the legislature, testifying of what we need to do. And I think it can be done. So with that, I'll shut up for a minute.
Thank you, Shirley. Important perspective. Patricia? Wait a minute, you're still muted, dear. You're muted.
There you go.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to speak from the police perspective. Like Miss Shirley, I too have great nephews and brothers, and I am constantly in fear of what would happen to them. I remember when we had Freddie Gray got murdered, and my nephew asked me, "Aunt Pat, what should I do?" Now, he's a good boy, and I'm not just saying because he's my nephew. I wonder how he is my nephew, because he is a good boy. He has his master's degree in bioengineer. He asked me, "Aunt Pat, what can I do if they stop me?" I had no answer for him. And I just said something flip. Hey, the guy won't make it to court. But I had no answer for him. You damn if you do, and you damn if you don't. But I do have this perspective about police officers after being one for 20 some years. The problem with the police department here and any other jurisdiction lacks education and training. People have to understand, especially in Baltimore City, and rest of the jurisdictions, you're talking about people, half of them never been around minorities, don't have good opinions of minorities, just what they're told. Then you have another group who are going from the poverty level to a higher economic level. Can you imagine that you're going to be making $80,000 and $90,000 a year with just your GED or high school diploma? You have it. You have a different form of prejudice and hate. They go from the city, move to Howard County. They have made it, as we say, they forgot where they came from. Then the second half, you have this fear. I don't know why whites are scared of blacks. I see them when they clutch their purse on the elevators. I see when they do bills, they want to pass certain bills because they think it's going to affect us. How many black people do you really think there are? It's not that many of us. You know, it's really not. But as far as the police department is concerned, lack of training. Lack of training. Egyptian police are trained for 5 years and stay away from the regular population, not to be tempted by any corruption or anything else. Germany, 3 years. We lack education. Lord knows half our officers here in the city can't even write and read. Half our police officers can't go to court. They can't testify. So why are we still paying them a salary? I don't know what to tell our males. We used to have community relations, DARE, POW. If that benefited a minority group, it seems like they have cut it off. And they're just paying a price for it now. Am I happy what happened? No. I could not possibly be as an African-American woman. Would I like to see some improvement? Of course. Will I see it in my lifetime? I don't know. I'm not getting any younger. I don't know. And that's all I really have to say about that.
Okay, thanks. That's actually really helpful to have your perspective and your experience and your understanding of things from your own time in that ministry, really, in that ministry. So thank you, Patricia. So next is Michael Sarbanes, who is a dad and a teacher and probably has his own distinct perspective on this as well. Hi, Michael.
Well, good evening, everybody. I thought one of the things I'd like to start to do is to give voice to a couple of my students. Every week when we've been doing this online learning, I ask them a check-in question that's, trying to, how are they doing personally? And this week it was about what's been going on in the past week. My students are virtually all African-American, predominantly lower income. And just I'm just going to read two of the responses that I got. So, and these are juniors in high school. One says, enough is enough. Something needs to change. We shouldn't have to live like this. We got to remember it's not about white versus black. It's everybody versus racist. This is supposed to be the land of the free, but yet we don't have no freedom. And then another student wrote, I'm feeling afraid because us African Americans get attacked by police who are racist towards us. I think we should stop burning the wrong buildings, destroying our own city, state, country. So these are just two voices of students that have been on my students have been on my mind a lot, and my own children have been on my mind a lot. In my conversation with my own kids, at a pretty young age, they have a sense that there's this episodic nature to the country paying attention to the way racism is built into pretty much every system that we have. So there's an episode, there's Trayvon Martin and there's attention. And then there's a group of incidents, Michael Brown, Eric Garner, Freddie Gray, Tamir Rice, Philando Castile, there's that group of incidents, and then there's attention to it. And then that episode the attention seems to fade away. And now we had Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, the man who was birding in Central Park, and now George Floyd. And now there's a lot of attention again. And, you know, one of the questions that my kids ask is, well, so now there's a lot of attention and we're protesting and we're going to the protests, but then what? What's going to happen? What's going to happen next? And it strikes me that for people of color in the US, this is it's not an episodic thing. It's 365 days a year, year in and year out. And I'm hopeful to some degree that the more attention that gets paid, the more people participate in protests, the more there'll be this sense that this is a all the time problem that needs to be addressed all the time. I think, Flo, in your sermon on Sunday, you talked about, you know, the need for a kind of Pentecost fire or a burning bush kind of fire, that, you know, we need to catch fire in a way that is transformative of how we live. And I feel like there's some hope in the increased awareness that's going on, but that awareness has got to turn into a commitment to change in fundamental ways, and then sustained action over generations to really fundamentally change it. And that's the part I feel like I don't want to see this attention and this focus and this expression of pain get lost again, as I feel like it so often has in the past. And it's really a challenge, I think, for white people in this country. So those were sort of my initial, what's been on my mind and on my heart the last couple of days.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Michael. Important to give voice to your students and your own kids, and because so much, you know, there's so much there that we want to be able to respond to for them. So thank you very much. So Stephen Dethridge, who's raising a couple of fine young men who are hanging all over him right there, he and Connie, and you know, I'm curious, Stephen, sort of what your thoughts and feelings are about what's going on right now.
I don't really want to talk about feelings. I think that's pointless. And quite honestly, you'll know how I feel from the things that I'll end up talking about. You know, we're talking about a system here that's been in place. I mean, you can trace modern policing back to Reconstruction and, you know, slave catching. And that's what we're up against. And one of the things, we Episcopalians have a very bad habit of speaking in platitudes, and we don't address our problems head on. I think being at CEAP was a little bit eye-opening this year, and able to have some good conversations with Flo, Corinne, Diane, and Deidre about these sort of things. And I want to be direct, because this is a problem that, frankly, people of color, people that look like me and my boys, we're not going to solve. This is going to take, frankly, it's going to take white folks to help solve this problem. And the thing about it is, I realize I'm partly preaching to the choir because I know the community that I belong to, and I know that you guys understand what I'm trying to say. And here's the thing. You know, the system that's in place was created by our oppressors, and I need you to understand that it's going to take action by white people in order to fix it. Any movement, you look at the civil rights movement, white folks were allies. You look at the Freedom Riders, there are white people sitting on those buses being attacked alongside black folks. And that's the truth. So what can you do? Because let's talk about action. Sitting here talking about how we feel, I mean, come on, we have a president that basically declared war on the public. So, you know, what are we going to do? And here's the thing. You can speak with your vote. You can speak with your dollars. We need to be able, if you have a DA that's going to purposefully try cases just for the win and not be able to, look at it with a caring eye and see how this could possibly affect somebody negatively. These are the people that we have to vote out of office. Judges, sheriffs. We need people that are in place that are really going to try to do things to move this forward. True police reform. That's what we need. If we have, because part of the thing with politicians is, police unions are powerful. It's a voting block. So if we have politicians that are going to be afraid of the police unions, that's a problem. These are the people that need to get out of office, and we need to get people in there. And part of the problem with that is just look at state legislature. You look at, it is an honor to be able to say that I worship with Shirley Nathan Pulliam, but she's the exception. She ain't the rule. So we have people that are a part of this community that live in Frederick County, Anne Arundel, like we do, Howard, Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Harford County. We got folks from all over. Don't focus on the big shiny thing. When you look at Trump declaring war, listen, the state of Maryland is going to go blue. Let's be honest. Don't focus on the shiny thing. What are you going to do at the local and state level? Today was the primary. I hope everybody voted. That's what matters. George Floyd ain't coming back. Trayvon ain't coming back. But use your weapons. Now, I have to be honest, listen, I'm from Brooklyn, New York. Okay? I'm 40 years old. I grew up in Crown Heights. I was their age during the Crown Heights riots. I lived through that. I remember seeing the Rodney King video. I mean, seeing, the Target on Mondawmin being looted during the Freddie Gray riots, that's fresh in my mind. I got to be honest, I'm really not optimistic about how things are going to change. However, we are a community of prayer. I'm a man of prayer, and I will continue to pray. And my hope is that things will change. But part of my optimism comes from the fact that people haven't spoken with their vote. I mean, look at school shootings. What legislation has changed when we've chosen risk acceptance as opposed to dealing with things head on. My hope is that even just amongst this small community, if some of y'all hear what I'm trying to say and you speak with your vote, you speak with your dollars, my hope is that there is some small change, at least even here in Maryland, and something happens to restore some of my optimism.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, boys. You got a pretty awesome dad there, right? Yeah. But thanks, Steve. Thanks for the challenge and thanks for the honesty. That really matters. Thank you. Justin.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, Justin.
I have to say, I'll be the first one to tell anybody that I'm not a huge fan of watching the news and keeping up on current events because I can find it so very depressing and troublesome, especially here around Baltimore. But what I will say is that I am extremely proud of our country in terms of the peaceful protesting that has been happening, because I think it is extraordinarily important to bring light to the situation, get as much attention to it as possible, and hopefully that facilitates change. Honestly, I just finished a degree in criminal justice, so I spent a lot of time looking at the intersection of the criminal justice system and the minority communities, especially African American communities. And I think that we've come a very, very long way from the times of slavery in terms of the rights that African American men and women have. But events like we've had in the past week or two really show us how much further that we have to go. We've gained so much, but yet we still have so much more to solve and so much more in terms of human rights to achieve. So I'm hopeful that things will change. I really wanted to hone in on the fact, as a young African American man, that I've never, even growing up in Howard County, I've never had a positive outlook on the police. Even getting to college, I've talked to police here in Baltimore, around the country, in England back in January. I mean, they take an oath to protect and serve the communities that they are in. I think many of them do a great job in doing that. I think that many do not. I think one of the biggest ways that we can change what we're seeing is by having stronger police community ties. I mean, having community members that, it has to go both ways. You have to have a community that trusts the police. You also have to have police who are devoted to serving their community in the best way. And I just think that we don't have that, which is a large reason why we see the things that we see today in our current, in our country. So, yeah, I'm 22, but I mean, I have regrettably grown up, like I said, with this negative image of the police. I think that my parents would also, maybe not negative, I think that every Black person on a certain level has either had the conversation or had the thought about, based off of what has happened in our history, about our encounters with the police. I don't, luckily I've always been on the side of being able to talk to them from a perspective of not, from the perspective of, what am I trying to say?
Non-confrontational.
Right, take your
Yeah,
time.
non-confrontational it's been from an academic standpoint. So I've gotten to talk to them about the issues rather than be on the other side of it. So, but no, overall, this whole situation is very saddening. But like I said, I'm very hopeful. With the right strategy, change is possible. Change is inevitable, but it seems to be a very slow process, but I am optimistic about it.
Okay, thanks, Justin. I really appreciate your comments and your perspective. And actually, I thank all of you who've spoken so far to give us sort of a continuum of thoughts and feelings and ideas, and also some energy and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to turn it back now over to Patrick and Deirdre to sort of start calling on people who want to share your own thoughts and feelings and your own ideas and your sense of things.
Thank you. Bishop Chilton, you have the word.
Thank you. Hello, everybody.
Hi, Chilton.
Hi there. What I would like to do is take all of you to Lafayette Square last night. I was not there. I'm not eligible to leave my family compound here, but I was in constant contact with a number of Episcopal clergy from the Diocese of Washington, lay leaders as well. The protests were peaceful. There was prayer. Unfortunately, they were singing and chanting, but one hopes that in the out of doors, the virus is dispersed quickly. There was love in the air. There was an anxiety because there had been a small fire set in the basement of St. John's Church, destroyed the nursery. It was quickly put out. And as the rector there said, fires are not nearly as important as lives. We can rebuild a room. We can't rebuild a person who's died. And so along about 6:30, half an hour before the official curfew that Muriel Bowser had imposed on the district, people became aware that police in riot gear, mounted police, were marching towards the park. And things began to feel very ominous. And so people began clustering into groups to talk about what they were seeing and what it might mean. Very soon after, the police and those on horseback simply plowed their way into the crowd like bulldozers, pushing the crowd away from the church. Then tear gas was dispersed, thick and heavy. I don't know how many of you have been through tear gas. I have. It's awful. It stings your eyes, it stays in your throat, it makes your stomach upset. It's terrible. It's brutal. And then they released these light bombs, these kind of large firecrackers. And then they continued to press into the crowd until finally the crowd was contained behind a barrier. The police continued with their shields and their horses. And so very soon, people who were at a distance could see a small group of folks coming down the street. They first recognized the Attorney General. Then they recognized the president. They strode up to the sign in front of St. John's Church. President Trump held up a Bible, initially upside down, and just stood there, basically waiting for cameras to roll. He didn't pray. He didn't open the Bible. He didn't say a consoling word. He didn't speak a word of faith. He simply was engaging in an absolute photo op. By this time, most of the people I know had dispersed out of fear that violence would begin to happen. But that was just a little vignette of what happened at Lafayette Square around 6:30 last night. And I just wanted to take you all there because this was a peaceful, loving, prayerful demonstration and gathering. People were giving out water and snacks and masks and prayer cards and all sorts of things. And all of a sudden, this brute show of force and this photo op entered right into that scene. So that's a little perspective for all of us on what happened to people who were in Lafayette Park yesterday.
Chilton, can you share some of your own thoughts and feelings about that?
Well, I'll say a couple things, Flo. I'm almost afraid to get started because I'm not sure I can stop.
Yeah.
But to focus on the experience that I just described, I am royally offended that the President of the United States would manipulate a church and a church ground and a gathering of people who were praying and singing and witnessing peacefully to advance his own political agenda with the group of people that he knows he was playing that to. So I am, to use Marianne Buddy's good language, I'm outraged that a church, any church, but I have this possessive feeling about this particular church, would be used as a tool, would be politicized in this particular way. I'm also filled with fear because when the Attorney General of the United States, our chief judicial officer, gets to escort the president into this activity, there is something really scary about that for me.
Yeah. I think the one of the images out of that I do hold up is that he held up the Bible upside down.
Yeah.
And I thought that just sort of encapsulates how egregious that entire event was. Just how egregious it was. So thanks for sharing.
Can I just say something?
You bet, Mike.
I actually watched some of the videos. You get them on YouTube, but I had 2 hours fresh of what happened last night. And it's just what Chilton said. The tear gas was just flowing it was just thick as pea soup around the protesters, and firing rubber bullets at them. And this is at Lafayette Square by the church.
Yep.
And then I guess what else? And the horse came in. What it reminded me of was that scene in what's this? The Russian movie about Dr. Zhivago. And the scene there where there was the Cossacks come in and trample these people who are peacefully protesting.
Get you.
So that's what came to my mind when I saw it.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. I really appreciate that. Okay. Who's next? Thank you.
It's me next.
Oh, good.
Hey, guys.
Hey, it's very cool to have you with us tonight.
Yeah, I know that I'm not a face that a lot of new people know from St. Bees, but I grew up at St. Bees, and I still consider myself a member, even though I'm not there all the time. So when my mom told me about this, it felt really important to me to log in to see all of you guys and to feel that to feel safe with my community and to know that the people that I grew up with care about this the way that we should. One thing that I have been really focusing my efforts on is making sure that I am not a burden to my Black friends. I am a white woman with a lot of privilege. I've been so lucky in that, and it is my responsibility to learn how to use that privilege to help those who do not have that privilege. It is my job to educate myself and to not put the impetus on my friends who are dealing with massive amounts of PTSD and trauma and emotional burden. If I can make myself someone that they do not have to explain things to or show resources, then that is all the better. A lot of my white friends have come to me and asked how they can help and how they can do things. And I've tried to help them in all the ways that I can, because if they're coming to me, then that's one less person that they are trying to ask. I've seen a lot of anger from a lot of my Black friends who have seen people asking them over and over, what can I do? Where do I go? What's the resources? And I encourage everybody to just Google for themselves. This is not the time to put that burden on all of your friends who are struggling with so much. I have a bunch of great resources that I would be so happy to share. There is so much out there right now that we can find that on our own. There's a great YouTube video that's about an hour long, and a lot of Black-owned businesses are advertised in it, so they get money from those advertisements. All you have to do is watch it. You don't have to do anything. You can just do it while you're doing the dishes. Hopefully your dishes don't last an hour, but whatever. So I try to be as conscious as I possibly can of the fact that this is not my space, this is not my trauma, and this is not my pain. I can feel empathy for all of this because I'm a human being who cares about other human beings. But my voice is not the voice that needs to be heard, which is why I initially wasn't going to say anything until Deirdre asked. But I am very conscious that my voice should be used to uplift voices of others who are not heard. It is our job to stand up for that. And it's our job to make sure that it's not my voice and my opinions that are being heard, but the opinions and voices of those whose voices are ignored. That's what I got.
Okay, thanks. And you are still a member of the parish. I think the one thing I do want to just sort of hold up, though, is if you remember, one of the things that Stephen challenged us to is what it means to be a white person of privilege, and that we cannot not find our voice. It's I think it's very important, at least for me. I want to make sure that I'm finding my voice that is in alignment, right, and is supportive and is felt that way. But I think it's also really important for us to not lose our voices, even as people of European descent. That we have some power and we have some fire that we can draw on to say things that need to be said. So thanks, Allison. Appreciate it. Who's next?
We're going to hear from Michael Soderstrand, and just before we turn to him, please check the chat. Niseth Moody has shared a URL for a full list of partners and organizations that you can donate to for Black Lives Matter, and it's blacklivesmatter.com/partners. You can see it in the chat, and we could send it out afterwards. Sarah Schrader asked about for some resources to look at guidance for voting. And Stephen Dethridge's response was to look at a site like ontheissues.org, or WAPO's Washington Post view on candidates' platforms. And Carol Burnside has mentioned an online resource to help our white brothers and sisters learn how to help, and it's called myworktodo.com, myworktodo.com. Almost there, Michael. Cynthia Wagner has mentioned a powerful podcast. It's called Seeing White. So she's mentioned that podcast, and Michael Young has posted a video, and so is Daphne. So there's lots of good stuff, goodies coming in from our people to help us move forward in our understanding as we work to eradicate racism. And I'm going to give the word to Michael.
Can I just ask one other quick question? So can you collect all that up for us, Deirdre? And then if you can get it to me, I'll make sure and get it out and about. Okay,
Yes,
great,
ma'am.
thanks.
I guess I'm next, am I correct?
Mhm.
My name is Michael Soderstrand. I think most of you know me. I've been at St. Lee's now for 3 years this fall. I have two things that I'd like to share. First one is, I think what Steve Dethridge said is really important and we need to take to heart. It is not just the President of the United States, it is all of our leaders. And we need to be sure that we know who we are voting for in our local elections, and that we do know who are the people that are going to represent our views in a meaningful way. And so I think that was really important, and I just wanted to stress that. However, I personally am appalled that the leaders of religious communities in the United States are not demanding the resignation of Donald Trump. And I sent something to Flo earlier on this. A group of us who got together, and Mike Morris, who is joining us tonight, is a UCC minister who wrote this petition, I guess you would call it. It calls for the compassionate removal of the President of the United States. We're asking him to resign, and if he does not, to have the 25th Amendment enacted. Now, do we believe that's going to happen? No. But I think it's really important for the community, the religious leaders, to stand up. And so I'm trying to get Bishop Curry to sign on to this. I would like anyone else who is willing to sign on to this to sign on to it, particularly all of our bishops and our ministers. The religious community needs to stand up, and it just appalls me that this is not happening. So if anybody's interested in that, I would love to have you contact me and we can work on this together.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you, Michael. There is a statement that was issued by 7 Episcopal bishops, came out today. We can send it around. I'm sure Flo will preface it with something, so we can send it around. It was really powerful. And Kathy Clark, you have the word.
Hi everybody.
Hi, Kathy.
I don't have anything long to say. I just wanted to take the opportunity because Justin is here. Justin, I had the pleasure of being your leader and going on that pilgrimage with you, following the Underground Railroad. And I just want you to know, because I haven't seen you in such a long time and I can't hug you in person, that I am so proud of you and I love you. And that's all I wanted to say. Sorry.
Okay, that's awesome. It's true. Yeah. Okay, anybody else?
Yes, Carol has asked to speak and I'm trying to find her. Patrick, can you unmute Carol if you get to her before I do?
Yes, Carol Burnside.
Yes,
Got it.
thank you.
There we are.
Thanks. I had a really different take on part of the situation this week than what I've ever had before. We all say that we're against the violence. I mean, I think it's clear that we're against racism. We're against the killing of young Black men and anyone. But whenever that kind of violence starts up afterwards, and I'm not naive enough to think that it's all the same violence. Some of it certainly is opportunistic for people who are using it as a chance to enrich themselves. Some of it is probably people on the right who are using it as an opportunity to discredit anti-racism work. But some of it, I do believe, is a spiritual outcry from people who have had enough and have been very patient for very long. And the thought that I had, and it's a little string of things to go together. Last week I finished an art piece called Voting Rights, and it's a quilt, but it's a depiction of a man being lynched, and in the branches of the tree it says, "Black and white ancestors understood the power of the vote. Honor those who died for the right vote." And I wasn't sure why at this particular time I felt absolutely compelled to finish that when I had started it in 2018 around the midterms. But anyway, I did feel compelled, and it wasn't until later that what occurred to me about the violence and about this art piece that I had just finished was a connection that when people have had enough of tyranny and they cannot stand it any longer, that's when revolution happens. And I remember 1992 when the Rodney King verdict came out and Los Angeles erupted. I remember then saying to Daphne, this is the warning that the revolution is coming if things don't change. Well, things haven't changed. And I think that now we're starting to see the revolution. And while I don't condone violence, and I'll always say that, I do have a different understanding, because what occurred to me was that this country began with a Revolutionary War. And the Revolutionary War was kicked off by the Boston Tea Party. And the slogan of the Boston Tea Party was, "Taxation without representation is tyranny." And when you have the kind of voter suppression that we had in the 2018 midterms, which threatens to continue, and the more and more frightened that Trump gets that he won't be reelected, the more and more Republicans are going to pull these stunts to suppress Black vote and any liberal vote, but especially Black vote. At some point, I can understand in the mind of an African-American person, and even in my own mind, if my vote doesn't count, or they're going to find every way to stop me from voting, but no one stands up to say I shouldn't have to pay taxes, then how is that any different from the revolution that our white European ancestors engaged in against the tyranny of the King of England? And I think that it's important to put this in historical perspective, because as we know, those who don't study history are doomed to repeat it. And history is repeating. The white, privileged, wealthy people in this country have taken and taken and taken and taken, and Black people have been very, very patient, very loving, very kind, very welcoming. And I think what we're seeing is the revolution that says we've had enough.
Got it. Thank you, Carol. Thank you. Lots of passion behind that.
Okay.
Lots of passion. Okay,
So
who's
Mike
next?
Morse would like the word. Mike Morse.
There you go.
Hi, Mike.
After that presentation, I'm very emotional. This
Okay.
is
Okay. Take your time.
we're good friends with Michael Soderstrand, as some of you know, and I admire Flo so much, I've been to worship with you several times, and you have filled me with so many insights that I'm overflowing. This is a very emotional time for me because I'm old. I'm going on 83, and I go back to Martin Luther King. John Lewis is a friend of mine. Linda Blackman, who marched with John Lewis at 15 years of age over the Selma Bridge, the Edmund Pettit Bridge, and the march to Montgomery, is an acquaintance. These are powerful, powerful witnesses who have risked their lives for freedom. And the one phrase that Linda Blackman said was the fundamental part of their nonviolent training before that march was loving confrontation, loving confrontation, loving confrontation. Know what your goal is. You want leadership that is moral and ethically responsible, that has the beneficence of the nation, of all of its people at its heart. Loving confrontation. We need to up the ante, quite frankly. I have been a clergy person for a long, long time. I don't know the number of years anymore. And I am so disappointed in the religious establishment that we have not really addressed strongly this issue of racism in our society. I am tired of prayers. I'm tired of the mush that is our rhetoric usually. We need concrete action that is loving, that seeks to change. And when we don't see the change, we need to keep at it and make sure that that change occurs. This has been a wonderful, wonderful conversation. The 5 presenters, Shirley and Patricia and Michael and Stephen and Justin, what power, what power. I am just so deeply moved. And thank you very much for letting me be an interloper. I feel like a friend. I hope so. Anyway, thank you very much.
You are a friend, and you're an important part of who we are. So thank you for your passion and for sharing with us. So who's next?
We're going to hear from Steve Dethridge and Marty Clark and Corinne in that order. Steve?
I'm looking at the chat, and Marty, I hope I'm not stepping on perhaps what you wanted to say, but I saw what Meg had posted about saying the wrong thing, and like here's the thing: when it comes to this, you're either on the side of right or you're on the side of wrong, and let's not get caught up in what we're going to say and what's going to be your action. The takeaway from this is going to be, what are you going to do? And I want to reiterate my challenge to this group at large and be a little bit more specific. When I ask you about how you're going to vote, what I'm asking you to do is something that, frankly, a lot of us aren't trained to do. When you vote, you typically vote for what is going to what's going to be the best for you and your family. Now, while we are a multicultural congregation, we know the majority of us are white. And I'm asking you in that challenge to do something that's the opposite of what we're all typically trained to do. I'm asking you to consider what may not directly affect you, and not just with police reform, but think about other things that affect our community. Immigration. I'm not Latino, but that's something that I'm passionate about. And I can vote for a platform that maybe doesn't directly affect me. I'm asking you to do the same with your vote. Let's not be worried about listen, we could talk for hours about, oh, well, we said this and this might have got misconstrued. What are you gonna do? We've had riots, we've had uprisings, we've had people talk, we've had people do the right or wrong thing. What are you gonna do? That's all you can control. So let's focus on that. What are we gonna do? That should be the takeaway. Think about what is our mission, right? We're supposed to be blazing beacons, taking righteous risk. What are we going to do? Are you willing to take that risk in how you vote? Are you willing to take that risk in how you spend your dollars? Some of our congregation members are business owners. Are you willing to give your business to a black bank? What are you willing to do? So we could sit here for hours about how we feel. This sucks. I hate watching the news. I know I'm fatigued. I can only imagine how other folks are feeling. What are you going to do? Are you going to be a blazing beacon? Are you going to take that risk? And maybe you don't vote in a way that you typically may have in the past. Maybe you're going to vote for a different judge. Maybe we're going to kick that DA out that isn't, that's going to, just try any case just to get a win. And screw somebody else's, make someone a felon because they got caught with a dime bag. What are we going to do?
Okay.
So that's all I want to say.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate the challenge. And who's next?
I actually missed Sam Cushman, who had his hand up quite a bit. So I'm just asking for help to find him. I'm sorry, I have new glasses. They're not working. There you are.
That's
I'm going to
Marty.
move to Sam. I'm unmuting you, Sam. But you've muted yourself. Okay, there we go.
Hi. Yes, just a brief comment. Back a year ago or 2 years ago, we had a series of speakers there at St. Bees. And I remember very well the first of the series of speakers. We brought a couple of people from Charlestown to participate. But the speaker was from the cathedral in Washington, D.C. And her comment at the end of her talk was very clear. And that is that the problem of racism and white supremacy falls clearly on the shoulders of white people. And I think that that's something that we have to keep aware. It's our responsibility. Now, the real problem, of course, is institutional racism, which is going to be very difficult to get rid of. But at the street level, just think about situations in which you might encounter a person of color, or you might be standing in a line, as I have at Charlestown Retirement Community, and seen one of my fellow residents get into some kind of a fuss with one of the black folks that was working in the restaurant. It's our responsibility to stand up and speak to them and to say that their behavior is wrong. And so we need to be ready to take on these responsibilities at the street level, wherever we go, and whatever circumstances that we might confront. But it's our responsibility as white folks to deal with this issue of white supremacy and racism. It's on our shoulders, absolutely, totally. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Thanks, Sam. I know that's a passion of yours. Okay.
Marty Clark. I see you, Pat.
Hello, brothers and sisters. I just want to circle us back around to our 5 fantastic speakers and some of their highlights I feel need a mentioning again. Everybody versus racism. And it's wonderful to follow the Yankee Steve as this Southern boy from Maryland tries to express his thoughts and feelings. Speak with your vote, speak with your dollars. We're doing a wonderful, wonderful job as a community, listening as a body of Christ. I know that as a fact because there's been 2 mentions. One where a fella felt frustrated because he knows he's preaching to the choir. And another young lady who joined to check in so that she can feel safe. We are a safe community. I need to continually to work in this following circle of awareness, announcing to myself a need for change, action, and educating myself. And that's where I feel you need to speak up, even if you don't know what to say or say the wrong thing. At least you can lead to an understanding. Even ask for forgiveness of what you've said and ask for an understanding. For if you say nothing, then you are like those who said nothing when they came for the gypsies, and I said nothing. Or when they came for the Jew, and I said nothing. And then finally they came for me, and there was no one to say anything. And since we are a Christian community, I want to end with, I have never been more proud to be an Episcopalian. And I draw us all to our Book of Common Prayer. Turn to page 814, and there's a slew of prayers that I am certain one will touch you and help you to gain some further understanding. And then finally, my man Justin, and all you other old acolytes out there who went on the pilgrimage that Flo mentioned, good God. That pilgrimage ripped my heart apart. I saw evil white men everywhere. And I kept questioning to myself, would this be me? Would I fall in line to the lies and the foolishness, even put out by this mighty Episcopal Church of ours? The misunderstanding, the misinterpretations. But God Almighty, God is present and was so present on that pilgrimage. He filled me with visions of white men working the system. A white man who would set up a transport of animals and have holding pens, go into town, buy slaves, bring them back, put them to work, but slowly educate them, house them, feed them, work them back to health, set them free, and then about a month later report that they had escaped, and then do the damn thing all over again. I need to be a man like that, a man of action, as that Yankee Steve Dethridge said. I need to continue to be angry, and I need to educate my fellow white males. My brothers and sisters, I definitely need to be back in church, and this COVID-19 is crazy. I love you all. And remember, the Book of Common Prayer, page 814. And what I learned mostly from that pilgrimage was you crack that Bible open and you go to Romans 12:21. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty. Thank you. Okay,
Thank
who's
you,
next?
Marty. Nisette has asked for the word.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay?
We do.
Forgive me if I'm trying my best. I was actually writing down my thoughts so that I could come out coherently, but I don't think I've been able to think properly the past week. A roller coaster of emotions, from being angry to just bawling in front of the TV and social media, to feeling optimistic, at least when you see the positive protesters. And then yesterday, I think it all kind of came crashing down after seeing that guy that lives in DC do what he did. That was horrible. One thing I wanted to mention, I think is difficult because I feel like my back's against the wall. And I know that we have power in voting and our numbers and our dollars, but it seems to me that the people that have the power, and I use that word very loosely, don't understand what's happening, or either they do and just don't care. I think amongst a lot of people I'm seeing from social media, a lot of white people don't understand what white privilege is. They don't believe it exists. They don't get it. I appreciate the people that posted some things on the chat about like sites geared to white people to understand privilege and understand what to say, because I don't want to not say something. I want to say something to help them understand outside of like open your eyes, but clearly that's not good enough, because maybe they don't. Maybe it is ignorance. I don't know. I was listening to a podcast the other day with a very popular morning show. It's called The Breakfast Club. Some of you guys might have seen one of the head guys on there, Charlemagne the God. He was on CNN, and he got kind of more notable for when Biden came on and made that statement about if you ain't black, if you vote for Trump, you ain't black. Made that statement. On the show yesterday, they actually had Rush Limbaugh. And at first I was like, I don't even want to hear that man talk. But I opened my eyes and my ears, and I was, I'm glad that they had him on, talking, because he's so right side, and hearing him. And he literally said, there is no white privilege. It's a made up word from the liberals. It does not exist. And he has such a wide base of people that listen to him and follow him and believe that. And I feel like if we don't somehow break through that, they're not understanding what happens. And so to kind of go off, one point I wanted to make was, I think Stephen was saying earlier, and I think all the speakers that spoke, Stephen was saying to take action. Outside of voting and your dollars, I seriously ask for all of our Caucasian brothers and sisters on here that have family and friends to tell them what you're hearing today. Because I think there's still some kind of disconnect. You guys here know it. That's why you're here. That's why you're part of a congregation. But you know somebody who doesn't know it. You know somebody who didn't think that this knee in a man's neck wasn't driven by racism. There was truly, I had to take a picture of it because I was looking at different chats on Facebook, and one person wrote that that's not racist just because it happened. And I was like about to throw my phone because I'm like, how do you not see that? There are people who don't see what's happening. And my call to action to you all is to please, your action should be to tell and talk to people, not just talking to African Americans, but to talk to other white people. The reason why I feel that my back's against the wall is that the moment, and kind of going back to COVID-19, I think one of the initial topics that Reverend Flo mentioned tonight, we're talking about COVID-19, was as soon as they mentioned that this is disproportionately affecting African Americans or people of color, boom, let's open the economy again. Let's go out because it's okay. It's okay, it's not affecting them. Because if it was hitting Beverly Hills and if it was hitting Calabasas, California, and every other extreme affluent area, we'd have been locked down and hunkered in. But the moment that happens, people of color who are on the front lines, I don't mean healthcare workers and doctors, I mean people at the gas stations, the people at the fast food places, people at Walmart and Target, the people at the true front lines, unfortunately, are low-wage people of color. And then they wanted to open up the floodgates, and here we go. And white people can go and protest. I'm sorry, not protest. They can exercise their First Amendment rights with rifles and spit in faces of cops. And it's okay. And the moment people look like me do it, we're protesting, we're violent. And I just feel like, what more can we do?
We can't win.
So I'm gonna stop there because I was not gonna cry. But as you can see, it's frustrating. It's frustrating. And as a woman of God, I wanna have faithful thoughts, but I swear Reverend Flo, I'd be lying if I said I did. I have some really bad, not Christian-like thoughts lately. I've been asking God for forgiveness. I've been asking for forgiveness because I know it's not right.
Okay,
But
Nisa,
I'll end on that note. Thank you.
the truth of the matter is that so first of all, thank you. Thank you for your witness, and thank you for your words. And one of the reasons that we have conversations like this is so we can listen to each other, right? So we can begin to hear each other and begin to understand, and that hopefully when you feel like your back is against the wall, that you know you've got other people standing there with you, and that you are not and that you're not there by yourself. Okay. Next. Yeah. Next.
Hey, everybody. Okay.
Hi, Tremar.
Hey, let me just say, I'm still stewing. I'm still angry. I'm still hurt. I'm still bitter. And I still have resentments. Not at the level initially, but it's coming down. Thank you, Reverend Flo. For me, again, to sum it up, I've dealt with racism. I've dealt with prejudice, from my personal experience, I'd say from 8 years old up until the Freddie Gray, the Floyd, the Cooper, and I'm not sure if you understand about what's going on. I think you hear us, but you don't feel it. And there are those who do feel, who are not of African American descent or even of color. But those who feel, because you've dealt with your own types of racism and prejudice, that's good, because it's deep. It's deep. It's deep. It's so deep where at one point in my life, and Deidre will, I don't know if she remembers that, because of racism and prejudice, not that I hated white people, all white people, I didn't want to be around. And I told Reverend Flo, because of what has happened, I want to detach. I just sort of want to be by myself. That helps me to not get hurt, not feel the pain, not feel the injustice, not feel the racism, not feel the physical, mental, and spiritual blackening out. By being detached, it gives me a time to kind of regroup. What do I really want? There's a comedian named Trevor Noah. He has on his YouTube a segment on what has happened, and he eloquently expresses how I feel. Eloquently expresses how I feel. As an African American female, how should I put it? I am tired, still at this day, I am tired of trying to not necessarily go out of my way to show I am as you expect, as what you want, as good as. I'm tired of that. I shouldn't have to go through this. I shouldn't have to prove that I am as good as you are. My people, my colleagues, the institution, I shouldn't have to go through this. But innately, I do. Innately, I have to go out there in the, quote, white world and show, feel, perform, let them know I'm no threat. I am just as good, or I can't say better because I don't want to get in trouble, but I am equivalent to your expectations. I'm tired of that. I'm tired of it. So I want to kind of like get away for a while. I need to spend time with, and again, because of my upbringing, because of my background in my religious belief of Christianity, I don't want to hate. I don't want to feel bitter. I don't want to lash out. I don't want resentments. I need to, as quote, Jesus, I need to kind of get away. And that's what I have to do because again, I'm 64 years old. I have seen what, and I'm not going to say white people. I'm going to say I have seen and felt and dealt with what the institution of those who are in charge, which happen to be of European descent, I have seen and felt and dealt with that. And I don't want to deal with it anymore. I'm tired. So, the best way I can put it is, I love everyone. And again, I don't think it's necessarily because of my religious upbringing. I think because God has made me love, because I know God loves me. But at the same time, God is saying, you need to stand up, speak up. You need to be active. I mean, prayer is wonderful. Don't get me wrong. Meditation and prayer is wonderful. But like Jesus and Mary, we need to get out there and do something. Not burn things, not tear things down, not looter, not riot. But we need to do things in a positive way, saying it's wrong. We want justice. I want that. I want it now. It may not happen during my lifetime, but I want it. And I'm tired. I am so tired of, again, trying to be a part of a society or a culture that is putting me down. The same way when I saw the video of the policeman putting his leg on Floyd's neck, what did I see personally? I saw an institution, the white policeman putting his foot down on the neck of a Black man, those who are oppressed, those who are hurting, those who are lashing out, put his foot down and stop. And he's in control, and at the same time, he is stopping, he is inhibiting the voice of those who are hurting. I'm tired of it. And I told Reverend Flo, and I love you dearly, I'm tired. Because what I saw from that video was not a white man doing this. I saw an institution, someone who was to protect and take care of and be fair. I saw him cutting off the oppressed and showed no empathy, nothing. And that's how I see the American society, the culture. He reminded me biblically of Pharaoh. I'm saying that's Pharaoh, because Pharaoh is in the Bible shutting off a race of people who are oppressed, who are trying to make it because of their religious beliefs, because of because of their difference, cut them off. And he showed no empathy. He showed no sympathy. He's basically saying, I'm in control. I can do what I want to do. I'm still angry, Reverend Flo.
Okay. It's okay, Tremar. It's okay.
Okay.
It's all right. You're not alone. You're not alone. Okay. And I understand how hard it is to stay. I get that. I think. And but that's okay. We're not going anywhere, honey. We're not going anywhere. Okay.
All right. Love you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Tremar, and Nisette, and Steve, and Marty for that recommitment to eradicate racism, Marty. Thank you. And Miss Pat is going to speak again, please. And then Sophie, and then Dick.
I'm not going to be long. I'm just going to hit on a few points that everybody talked about. Steve is correct about voting. I've never missed an election or a primary since I was 18. My grandmother used to take me by the hand in the booth with her to vote. My grandmother was part Blackfoot and Mexican. And she said, this is important. Oh, election time for me is better than Christmas. You know, we used to hit all the parties of the losers, eat their food, drink their liquor, then go winner's place. But it's very important that we vote. We must vote. Second of all, I understand what everybody else is saying. They're disappointed in the church reaction and Christians' reaction. I left the Baptist church because if I heard, girl, I'm just going to pray on it, I was going to choke the person who said it to me. And like the pastor said one day, Christians take that extra step. We have no fear. We get beat up, we go back out and do it again. And that's what people have forgotten and won't do. You can pray for me all you like. If you're not behind me, I don't need you. I really don't need you. As far as, you know, can you tell me what I need to do to help stop bigotry? I don't know what to do. If you're a Christian, you know what to do. You don't need the answer from us. I can't explain it to you. I'm not getting any younger, and I'd rather spend my energy on something that's going to help somebody. I like this talk that we're having, but when I wake up in the morning, nothing will have changed. I hope half the people don't get shot around my way, which I half miss all the time. But something has to get done. I mean, you can do stuff in your own small way. Do you know your neighbors? Do you mow their lawn? Do you sweep off something? It is the small things. Do you need me to go to the grocery store for you because I know you're elderly, you can't get out? Hey, how are you doing? Or simply, good morning. People don't even speak anymore. Good morning, how are you? It's the simple, small things, because after all these years, it's almost trying to decide if we should give y'all should give the Native Americans back their land, or Palestine should get back their land. It has not and will not be resolved in my lifetime. But it's the small things. And we have to remember to do the small things and to be patient, but be diligent in what you do. Okay. That's all.
Thanks, Pat.
Thank you, Pat. It was good to hear from you. Before we turn the mic to Sophia Waterman, I just want to share with you all the one thing that your funds committee and vestry and rector have been working very hard to do with respect to racial justice investing is to have our portfolio be weapons free. This is something that has been true for us since 2009. We do not own weapons. We do not own civilian weapons. We do not own ammunition. We do not own scopes. We do not own things that make civilian weapons deadlier and deadlier, as we've seen in the streets of Baltimore and many other cities across the United States. And we also do not own weapons of mass destruction. So I just want to point out to you that there are ways that we have been cleaning and we have been clearing and we have been working to eradicate in the dollars that are in fact a vote with our values for how we make our money in the world is part of our impact. And I'm going to turn the mic over to Sophia.
Hi guys, I'm Sophie. I've been a member of St. Bees for as long as I can remember, and I am currently living in Oregon. I go to school out here, and I thought it would be helpful for you guys to kind of hear about what's happening here on the West Coast because it's drastically different. There's a lot of conversation. I live in a small town called Corvallis. It's mostly white, and I had the privilege of going to a Black Lives Matter movement event with my roommate, and to be able to go and be with a community, not just a community of white people, but a community of all sorts of different races, ages, in a small white town was just absolutely powerful to hear Black voices from students from South Seattle, from Portland, from here in Corvallis, was just amazing because their voice is never the dominant voice ever, especially not on the West Coast, especially not in a small white town. And it was such a privilege to be able to listen to their stories and hear their fears, and be able to show that I am there to support. I'm not there to speak out. I'm not there to tell them, you know, X, Y, and Z. I'm there to listen. And I think that's one of the things I've been picking up on, and just sitting here and listening to this conversation is just listening to Black voices is beyond powerful. It's beyond one of the most amazing tools that we can use to help this change, you know? We all constantly talk about like the listening and sitting there and listen, and actually sitting down and listening and not just waiting to speak. And that's what I've been doing tonight is listening to your voices and really taking the heart, you know, voting, important, wonderful. Speaking out to my friends who might not agree with me has been a challenge, but something I found very rewarding. Because it's important. It's important that we know that we're actively trying to change. We're actively trying to educate, and being a white ally and not, you know, smothering voices and not taking the lead, but stepping back and just being there as support, I think is just crucial and wonderful. And, you know, it's definitely different. It's definitely a different scene here on the West Coast. I was unable to go up to Portland. I wish I was, but knowing that people are standing up and are saying this is wrong, this is not okay, is powerful. I think in this time, I think it's powerful for young people to see what's happening and to be a part of it as well. That's all I have to say.
Thanks, so Sophie, you need to think of yourself as a missionary from St. Bartholomew's, okay? Yes. Because you have a voice, and you have some passion, and you have you have a good spirit, okay? Yeah. Okay, cool. I just want to note that it's about 8:45. Normally Zoom meetings exhaust me, but I'm finding myself not so exhausted, but I'm going to aim for us to end by 9. That's a 2-hour time. And I know you all have been, a lot of you have been extraordinarily patient, and but we're going to try to end towards 9 tonight, just so you all know, unless there are people of you, people who need to make sure that you have a chance to speak. Okay, Deirdre, who's next?
Dick would like to speak. Dick, you're unmuted. You can go ahead.
Okay, fine. This is going to be strictly off the top of my hat, but it's something that I've got to tell you about. 60 years ago, I was in the workforce. The workforce was full of men. There were some women secretaries. We had one woman who was a dressman for a while. They were all white. Nobody was black. In 1980, I left the workforce, and it was just about the same. That was 1980. That's almost 45 years ago. Last summer, I was pleased to be invited to join the vestry. And I came to the vestry meeting, and I found out, my Lord, it's full of women, and over half of them are black. And it was the most wonderful experience I've ever had. I just couldn't believe that to come that far. And I want you to remember that you started a long ways back from where you are now. I know there's a long way to go, and I hope I can figure out a way to help.
Thank you, Dick. What a nice testimony. Yeah. Deirdre, who else?
We're giving the word to Shirley Nathan Pulliam.
Okay.
Shirley, please unmute yourself. Okay, you can go.
Okay, I got it. Okay, good. I'm still learning. Okay.
Good job.
I just wanted to quickly say this has been a powerful meeting and discussion. I know Marty brought tears to my eyes and many of the other speakers. But as we said, we have to make sure that at the end that this man, George Floyd, life was not in vain, that we will be able to make a significant difference in the lives of the people that we touch. And as we say every Sunday, we have to take those righteous risks to make a difference. And we have to remember also that racism and bigotry breeds fear. And so we have to just pray about it and know that God is in our corner and ask God continuously to look down on us and make the lives of those people who are suffering better. And I just want to remember that in all these 25 years in the legislature, every day someone, one or two or three, come to tell me about institutional racism and how it impacts their lives. And every one of those people end up ill with one disease or the other. Racism kills. It kills in more ways than one. And for that, God bless each and every one of you.
Thank you, Shirley. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Shirley. I would like to take the mic for a moment. I would like to unmute everyone, if it's okay, and ask that we all join one another in our vision and mission statement. So shall we begin? We will,
with God's help,
be a vibrant faith community that is a blazing beacon
of God's transforming love in the world. God is calling us to take righteous risks. We accept this call and will respond by seeking and serving Christ in all
people.
And serving Christ in all people.
Thank you.
Amen.
Flo, it's yours. Everyone's unmuted, Flo. So it might be a little wild.
Then it must be St. Bartholomew's, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Those are arrowheads.
So maybe we ought to remute for just a moment. Okay.
Actually, Daphne McClellan would like to speak.
Please.
I just wanted to say briefly that we have to remember that George Floyd is the person that all of this has been focused on recently, but these things happen every day in all parts of our country. And it's, you know, it's not just Freddie Gray 5 years ago and then jump to George Floyd this past week. It has been murder after murder and travesty after travesty around our country, you know, forever. And I think that's what we as white people really have to wrap our heads around, because Black people have always known that. It's that all of a sudden something pops up and then there's marches and people go and gather and then, you know, in a couple of weeks it goes away and people turn their attention to other things that are important in their lives. But that is where the rubber will hit the road, whether we as a white community can really change the way we view the world and come to the understanding that people of color have to live with every day. And I think that is the challenge before us. It's that we can't move on and forget this. We have to make a commitment to a changed view of the world that will move us to action on a long-term basis.
Okay, thanks. Thanks. Anybody else, Deirdre?
No, I do want to add that I think what we have at its worst time that I've seen in my life, I'm 51, is a spiritual crisis. I think racism is a spiritual crisis. I think it's a spiritual health crisis. And I really want to respond to all the speakers, and in particular to Steve and Marty, both, as both my brothers. You know, I'm light brown. Marty's not brown. Steve's a little darker brown than I am. And we're all part of the same family. And if our family is broken, if our body is not the body of Christ, that family, if we are not all supporting one another, and we are not all feeling for one another, and we are not all with recommitting with both our words, but also even more importantly with our deeds to being healthier and being a better family, then I think we stay in crisis. And so I just want to say, many of you know my family. I think that everybody should marry somebody, or marriage is not the only expression of love. Form family and friendships and relationships with people who are people of color, because your world will be changed and your world will be enriched and your decision making will be improved. And this is how we can cure this spiritual health crisis that we have. And so I wanted to say that. And I also want to offer that if you all wish to have a what's next future conversation, to let Flo hear from you, and we will respond.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks. Heather Neal had her hand up, I think.
Thing that's been said. We're in the church, and God, Jesus, speaks to our hearts. He wants us to change inside. And so I'm going to say this to everybody. We're all looking to action. There's things that we need to do as individuals. For my white brothers and sisters, to be able to think about how you feel about Black people. What do you think when a new Black person comes on the job? Do you automatically think maybe they're just not going to be as good as you would hope? Incompetence, perhaps? Be thinking about some of the negative attitudes. And why am I saying this? White supremacy affects everybody. We've grown up with this. You don't have to be in a white supremacist group or a card-carrying KKK member. We're all affected by white supremacy. And it's a lie. It's not real. But we have to do something to adjust our thoughts. And so think about how we treat each other, what we're thinking about when we view one another. For George Floyd, how would you feel if he was walking towards you, this big Black man? Would you have positive thoughts about him? Negative thoughts about him? Would you be afraid? I just want us to go deep, because as Black people, we have to deal with this every day on the job, and it's not being sensitive and it's not being an angry Black woman. It's about the reality of being a Black person in a white society. Even with the people that you love, for me, who are white. Friends that I have, where either I have to check them or I have to check out because I just need to keep my mouth closed. I'm at work. And so I'm just asking you, brothers and sisters, to be thinking about this on a personal level also. Not just the police and the politicians and the institutions. We make up the police force. We make up the institutions. We are the ones that vote. And we are Christians. And so therefore we can go deep because I'll say that word, because God can help us go deep. God can transform us to be the people that He wants us to be, that we need to be in order to make change happen. It has to start here.
Thanks, Heather. Thanks. Not always to share, not always easy to share, but thanks. Okay, Deirdre, anybody else?
No, I think we're coming to a wrap.
Okay. So, what an extraordinary Zoom meeting. I want to say that I want to say that I don't know many communities that could have this kind of conversation. And I really treasure that we were able to gather together tonight and to share thoughts and feelings, and also to begin to think about what we can do and how we can respond to the world that we're living in right now, how we can reach down deep inside of ourselves for that Pentecostal fire, right? That Pentecostal fire for God. What is within us that we can draw on, that gives us the courage and the fortitude to do our own self-assessments. Regardless of what your culture is or your race, how do we allow ourselves to go inside deeply enough to do that kind of interior work that is a critical part of how we understand who we are? And that one of the reasons we do that is because we know that God does that with us. We don't do that by ourselves. But then what does it also mean to be able to be in a community where we can actually listen to one another, where we can actually share our thoughts and our feelings, at least at some level. So I am honored that we have the ability to have this kind of conversation, and to begin or to continue to have this capacity to listen to one another, to speak to one another, and therefore I think to continue to learn from one another, and to continue to find ways in which we are God's children, striding toward the kingdom of God. Not always very smoothly, not always very well, but hopefully out of tonight, there will have been some conversation that will give us some ideas about how to move forward, not just individually, but also as a community of faith. And so I want to thank each and every one of you for being here. I want to thank each and every one of you for your prayers, for your sense of yourself, for our willingness to be a congregation that can have these kinds of conversations, and for what we can do as a consequence of what it means to be the community of faithful characters. So thank you all very much. So I want to end with a prayer. On page 815 in the Book of Common Prayer. Okay. It's a prayer for the human family. Oh God, you made us in your own image. Every one of us is made in the image of God. And you redeemed us through Jesus, your Son. Every one of us is redeemed through Jesus, your Son. So look with compassion on the whole human family. Take away the arrogance and hatred which infect our hearts. Break down the walls that separate us. Unite us in bonds of love, and work through our struggle and confusion to accomplish your purposes on earth, that in your good time, all nations and races may serve you in harmony around your heavenly throne. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. If you have thoughts or ideas after this conversation is over, I appreciate hearing from you. And I also want to just be, I want you to know that you are welcome to reflect. There are other things that occur to you that you want to share. if you think that this is something that we should do again, maybe with a different emphasis or whatever, let's just keep staying in touch and keep being attentive to how God is moving in our community and what God is asking us to do. So blessings, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. And I will see you all hopefully Sunday.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Everybody's unmuted.